Good morning, grade fours. Welcome to Natural Science. Can you believe that it is Friday? Hey, I think that you have done so well this week and you've made it. I know how hard that you're working, and the fact that you're here, you are present, you want to learn and you want to grow, and I think that's amazing. And so after today's work, you can fully relax this weekend. Miss Kun gives you permission. I give you permission to fully rest and relax this weekend. Remember that if you've got any questions throughout, please email them to grade4@worksheetcloud.com. So let's begin our lesson with a joke. Right. So the joke that I'm going to tell you today is, what did the ocean say to the pirate? What did he say? Nothing. He just waved. Just waved, wave with an ocean. Okay, I'm sure you get it. I'm sure I don't need to sit and explain. But I know you are smiling right now as you are watching, and that is all that matters. So, hope you're excited to learn. We have now entered into our very last section that is part of life and living. And on Monday, we are starting a brand new section and we're going to look at energy. So this is going to be the last lesson on life and living. So let's get started. Today, we're going to be learning about structures for animal shelters. Okay, different types of shelters that animals use and the different structures and what they're made of and what they look like and so on. Okay, so specifically, we're going to look at natural structures. We are then going to look at man-made structures. And then lastly, we are going to look at the differences between shell and frame structures. So those are the three objectives that we are going to be learning about today. So we're going to start with natural shelters. Okay, so what exactly is a natural shelter? Natural habitats form homes for some animals, whereas other animals build their own homes. Some animals even live in other animals' homes. When an animal makes a home for itself, it is known as a natural home. Animals live in different kinds of homes, such as caves. So I'm sure you can see bats that love to live in caves. There's many creatures that love to live in caves. But remember, caves is something natural. It hasn't been man-made. And animals use what is naturally provided for them first before if they need to create their own. Trees, many animals live in trees, from your mammals to many insects, reptiles. There's so many animals that live in trees. Animals also live in holes in the ground. A lot of animals, they bury and make sort of these tunnels and burrows in the ground, and many of them live in the ground. We also have ants and earthworms and insects and things that also live in the ground as well. And then nests. So nests can also come in many different forms. Nests can be made, and I'll come back to nests, but they can be made using plant material, or they can be made using mud. There's certain birds like swallows that make their nests from mud. Okay, so now let's look in a little bit more detail. How beautiful is this picture? So nests are built by birds and other animals in trees, on the ground, and even in buildings. This is used as a home for them, and especially for their eggs and for their young. The shape of nests are usually sort of bowl-shaped and made of twigs, leaves, and grass, and they are held together by mud or saliva. Did you know that? So these nests that are made by birds, they're either held together by mud or saliva. And isn't it just amazing how the shape of nests by most birds are generally the same, this sort of bowl shaped to hold the eggs. And when they hatch, then you've got these little chicks that need to be cared for. Okay, now we have, look at that beehive. Isn't it amazing? So bees live in very large colonies. Their hive is made up of many six-sided hexagonal cells that are stuck together. So what the word hexagonal means in shapes, and either you've learned this in maths or you're going to learn it, we have different names of shapes depending on how many sides it has. A shape that has 6 sides is called a hexagon. And so that's why when we describe the shape of the cells that bees have, they are hexagonal in shape, which means that they have got 6 sides, and I'll show you in the next slide. The queen bee lays all of her eggs in the hive, and each egg is then put in a cell. So have a look over here. Here's an example of these hexagonal cells that I spoke to you about. And if we count the sides, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But just look at the pattern and how similar the cells are to one another. How amazing is it? And once the bees hatch and they're ready to go, then they make honey and they fill these hexagonal cells with their delicious honey. Isn't just nature amazing? Okay, let's have a look at animals that make burrows in the ground. So small rodents such as squirrels, rabbits, mice, and moles dig burrows in the ground to provide them with shelter. These burrows often form an underground network of tunnels in which these animals live. Insects such as ants also live in the ground. And remember that it's not just ants, there's also earthworms that live in the ground, and earthworms also form these little tunnels, and many animals use the ground, and either they make holes that are very deep in the ground, or they can make little holes that are a little bit shallow. So it all depends from species, from one animal to another. Okay, now we have, which is also pretty amazing, we have spiders. So spiders spin webs that are made from silk in their bodies. They make these webs, the silk in their bodies. And when the silk is then ejected or released from their bodies, they then start to, and they're liquid in their bodies. And when they're then released from their bodies, they start to solidify and they become solid. The sticky web then catches prey for the spider. So a fly or any type of creature or insect or organism that lands on the web is very sticky. It then sort of traps the prey. The spider can then catch the prey. So the webs are not only used as a home for a spider, but it's also used to help it catch its prey. Okay, so those are some of the natural structures that we find in nature, but now we also get structures for animals that are man-made. So those are the 2 types of structures. We have natural and man-made structures. Right, so many of you that have either seen horses' stables or stables of some kind, this is just an example. Other animals live in shelters that were built by humans. These shelters are normally for farm animals or pets. So for those of you that have got pets at home, and the dogs have got kennels outside, that is a structure that is man-made for your animal. Or cages, those are again man-made for animals. Or in a farm situation, we have pens to keep livestock, that is again man-made, or stables for horses such as this. These are all man-made, and these are structures that then are sort of homes for these animals. Right, so these structures are built by joining many different parts together. Different materials come in various different shapes and sizes are used to make structures. Now there are 4 functions of these man-made structures. So as I've just given you some different examples of the various different man-made structures, there's 4 different reasons why these structures are built. So the first one is either to protect. So structures are there in place to sort of protect the organism, or to protect the creature, or to protect something, right? So structures are either, the function of a structure is either for protection. The second function of a structure is either to contain an organism, contain an animal of some kind. The third function of a structure is for support. So you also get structures that are made for support. Now remember that what I'm talking about here is the general function of structures in general, and the fourth function is to sort of span a gap. So like your web, for example, that we see in nature, your web is made in between, say, sticks, or between branches, or between pillars, or between something, and it sort of spans that gap. So structures are made, whether it's natural or man-made, and there are different functions for these particular structures. And so we are going to look at a little bit in detail with the difference between frame and shell structures. Okay, so just take a moment, and I want you to think, maybe where you are, look around your house and look around where you are, and have a look at different structures around you. They can be natural, they can be man-made, and I want you to think about what the function of that particular structure would be. Is it to contain? Is it to protect? Is it to support? Is it to maybe span a gap between things? What is the function of the structure that you have around you? Remember, I've said in the past that science is about exploring the world around you, asking questions, and just using your senses to explore your environment. Right, so now let's have a look at shell and frame structures. So I'm going to start off with shell structures. Now shell structures mainly, they either contain and or protect the contents inside. So remember, we looked at the functions of having structures. So when we have specifically a shell structure, it is there to protect or contain whatever is inside. Okay, so in this particular picture, we've got a crab. Now, a crab doesn't have bones like what you and I have. Remember that animals that have got a skeleton or have got a backbone, we classify them as vertebrates, and animals that do not have a backbone are invertebrates. A crab is an example of an animal that is an invertebrate. A crab does not have a backbone, but it's got this outer shell, and we call this outer shell an exoskeleton. And an exoskeleton is what we would classify as a shell structure, and it is there for 2 reasons. That shell is hard, and it's there to protect the organs, or contain, as a structure, contain the organs and the insides of the crab, but it's also hard and durable so that it can protect the crab against the pressures of the waves that crash on a crab, because remember that we learned in our previous lesson with habitats, crabs like to live both on land and in water, so they're usually there on the shoreline. So they get access to both. Then if we have a look at sort of man-made shell structures, I've put here different modes of transport, because think of it like a frame almost. So it is a shell. Well, it's not a frame. It is a shell, and it contains whatever is inside. So when we're inside the car, it's also there to protect most of the time. And so these are examples of shell structures. Then we move on to frame structures. So now frame structures are quite important as well, because a frame structure gives support. One of the most important frame structures for all vertebrates is the skeleton. Right. The material used to make this frame is bone, and it is attached to the muscles that move the skeleton around. The skeleton supports supports and protects their bodies. So we have got a frame structure within our body, and our frame structure is our skeleton. Our skeleton is made up of different bones of various different sizes, lengths, and shapes that are then joined together to make up our skeleton. And our skeleton gives us a frame of our body, right? It frames our body, and our skeleton also helps us move. Our skeleton, there's various functions of a skeleton that you do learn in a little bit more detail when you reach grade 5. But a skeleton is there to help you move. It supports the body, and so on. So a very good example of a frame structure is actually our skeleton. Then we have frame structures that are made of what we call members and joins, right? So the members are sort of long parts, and those long parts come together at a join. So a frame structure is made up of different pieces, if I can put it like that. And these pieces, the longer pieces, are called members, and where those pieces get together, they're called joins. So if we have to look at our bodies, for example, we have bones that when they come together, they form a joint. And they're at that point where the bones come together, it joins together. And in our bodies, we call them joints. But just to mention again that members and joins are part of frame structures, and that we use to sort of classify frame structures and describe frame structures. Right. So just to recap for today's lesson, grade 4s, this lesson was all about different structures that are either natural or they are man-made for animals. Animals can either make their own structures, whether they bury into the ground and form burrows, or they have these beautiful hives, or they make nests, or they make webs, or any of those types of structures that are man-made, that are natural. And it's where the animal uses its natural environment to make those structures. Then we get structures that are man-made, and man-made structures, remember, are mostly seen with our pets that we keep, or with livestock and farm animals, stables, and so on. And remember the different functions of structures. They're used to support, to protect, to enclose, or to span a gap. Okay, and then we ended off our lesson with our 2 types of structures, looking at the difference of frame and shell structures, and looking at the 2 different types of structures there. So very short and sweet lesson, but that brings us to the end of our section of life and living. And so what I would like you to do is to go back, rewatch the videos. I hope that you are doing the activities that do come with these lessons, with these videos. And yeah, because remember, the more you practice, the more you're exposed to science, the more you'll learn and grow. So yes, but well done. That is it for our science for this week. And I really and truly hope that you are going to rest and relax and put your feet up a little bit, or go and play outside. And if you can't play outside, do something really cool inside. But it is your turn to have a really great weekend. So well done, boys and girls. I'm very proud of you. And if only I could meet each and every one of you. But I hope you have a wonderful day. And remember my favorite saying, Hakuna Matata, because it means no worries. Don't worry about anything. We can't control what the future has to hold, so don't worry. We can just take one thing at a time. Hakuna Matata. So from me, Miss Kun, be kind to one another. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.